Hey, hi, I'm glad you're here. This is Stephanie with This Reader's Life, Books and Other Blessings. And today it's another Tag Tuesday, so I am doing another tag. I always say they're my favorite things to do, and they really are. This one is harder than some of the other ones that I've done. I was tagged by Jeff at ReadingStillMatters, and the tag itself was originated by Allison at AllisonAnnotated, and I do not know her booktube, but I'm really anxious to check it out because I think it sounds interesting. But Jeff we've gone back and forth with tags a couple of times, and he is a wonderful, if you want to know more about history, it's a great place to find out about more great history books. And I know that he has one that I haven't watched yet is 5 great history books for beginners, because I am not the kind of history buff that he is. So he makes me a beginner, so to speak. He knows a lot more about history than I do and different types of history. So I'm really interested to see what he has to say about those 5 books for beginners. So I'm planning on watching that in the near future. But I have my notes here. The name of this tag is the booktuber role tag. So it talks about the role of the booktuber, and I'm really interested to answer these questions. I have listened to Jeff's answers, and since then I have not read through these questions, so it's sort of going to be a rapid fire, but we'll see how it goes. So question 1, how do you view your role as a booktuber? Examples might be as a critic, a curator, an influencer, an entertainer, an educator, etc. My role as a booktuber. Well, part of the reason I'm doing this is for fun and for other people to have fun and for the purpose of community. So that's the first thing that I love about this is that the community that builds through talking about books. And I love that in real life too. One of my favorite things in the world is when somebody says, "You read anything good lately?" And oh my goodness, it's so much fun to talk with someone and find your likes and your dislikes and discover new books that you haven't read or heard of. And so that's sort of how I feel about BookTube. I am not an educator. I do not have any desire to be an influencer other than to hope that there might be something that I would say that would inspire someone. I'd rather be someone that is an inspirer than an influencer, and I like to think there's a difference between those two things. But I talk about books that I liked and books that I didn't like, and what I got out of them personally. And it can be so different for so many different people that you can't really say that that what you say is right. You just know that what you say is what you feel, and I try to be honest and give honest reviews that give out enough about the book, that tell a person enough about the book for them to know whether or not it's something they want to move forward and read. So that, to me, that is what the role of a booktuber is. It's to help others find books, learn about books, and sometimes there's some education involved, but my goal is never to educate someone, but sometimes I think trivia is really interesting, so I like to talk about the author or something like that. That was a big answer for one question. Number 2, do you have any educational background in literature or literary criticism, either formal or self-directed? And if you're comfortable sharing, do you have any other education or professional experience that you bring to bear on your reviews? Probably not a lot, other than life experience. You do learn a lot as you live, and you kind of get about a clue about some things, and you appreciate things differently. So sometimes that's an interesting thing. But my education is not in literature. I've always loved literature. I spent my entire life working with numbers. So except for the time that I did medical transcription, but it wasn't a creative job, and it didn't require a lot of reading. It required a lot of listening. But so no, I would say nothing. I've taught myself a lot, and I've learned a lot from reading. So I could say that I've educated myself a great deal through reading. Anything I've ever wanted to know a lot more about, I've always found it through books. Always. I can't think of any time that I haven't been able to find the answers that I want through through reading either, and many times it's fiction, but most of the time, obviously, it would be nonfiction. But fiction has taught me a lot. I know a little bit about a lot of things because of the fiction that I've read. So, number 3, do you typically do any research on either the book or the author before you review a book? Sometimes. Sometimes I'll read a book based on its cover or on its title, or just the fact that it's an author that I enjoy or someone I trust has suggested it. But a lot of times, that's one of the things I love about Goodreads, or about like when the New York Times bestseller list, things like that. It's fun to read a little bit about those books. I don't usually. I think reading the back of the cover is probably the most common reason for me to choose a book, or reading, just a brief synopsis of what it's about, and I'm making sure that I'm answering the question here. But I do sometimes research an author. I find it interesting to know. I recently read Theo of Golden, and knowing more about the author changed the way that I thought about that book. I like knowing about, I like the biography of authors. I like to know about them, and I like to know about their inspirations. I mean, when I think about Ernest Hemingway, or I think about John Steinbeck, and how their writing was influenced by their own background. Flannery O'Connor is another one that I feel that way about. So I can't say that I read based on who the author is, although if I like an author, I'm going to pursue their books. But I do like finding out a little bit about an author, and I like it in BookTube videos when the booktuber tells you a little bit about the author, or where the premise of the book comes from, or the author's background. Someone that does that quite a little bit, and I'm trying to think of the name of her channel. It's Books from My Bookshelf, and her name is Rosamund, I believe. Either Rosalind or Rosamund. She's written some books, and I've read one of her books. I enjoyed it very much. But Books from My Bookshelf, I really, really enjoy that she goes into, in some cases, a fairly deep biography of the authors that she's talking about. And so I enjoy that a lot. She's worth listening to if you want to know more about the authors of the books that she reviews. Do you focus your reviews more on the objective qualities of a book, or more on your subjective opinions about it? I try to do both. I try to be honest, and although it's easy to not be very objective when you don't like something, it's easier to be objective when you do. But there's a lot of subjectivity in my reviews, but I do try to be fair, and I also try to talk about, if I didn't like the content, sometimes I really, really loved the writing, and I was impressed with the telling of a story, or the way that an author can form sentences and put together a story, more so than liking the story. And I try to mention both of those things. So I like to think that I am objective and subjective, but I definitely, I would not pretend not to be subjective in what I talk about, or even choose to read. Number 5, have you ever received a free book or advanced reader copy from the author, and if so, did it have any impact on your ability to honestly review the book, or on how you felt about it? I've only had a couple of books that I received from the author, and in both cases the author was a friend, and in both cases the only thing I will say is that it made me nervous to read it, in case I did hate it. And in both cases, I didn't hate the story, so I don't feel too horribly about it. And but yeah, I can see where it could definitely have a huge impact. And even if it's like an advanced reader copy, yeah, even if I didn't know the author, I think it would be hard knowing that you were handed this book and someone was hopeful that you would like it. It's easier to read sort of anonymously, I guess. So what's the next question? Do you review every book that you read? Are there any reasons that you might read a book but choose not to review it? I don't think I've ever read a book that I didn't intend to review. I don't always talk about every book that I don't finish. I might buzz through a book that I want to give to my grandson or something like that, or that I read a long time ago that I want to remember whether or not I want to loan it to someone, and that I maybe would not review. But if I've made it through the entire book, I will probably review it. I think I always have. I don't think that I've ever just not reviewed it. I've not finished, and I don't always say every single book that I don't finish. Usually because I don't like it, or I think it's so poorly written that I do not want to that I don't want to talk about it. There's no point in that. I'm not a critic who and I'm not literary enough to tell you this is a bad book. But if I'm reading it and I think it was poorly written, I might not mention it at all. How do you feel about the fact that many people now primarily consume book reviews by hobbyists on BookTube rather than the professional critics? What is lost and what is gained? Well, I think that you get some very honest reviews from a hobbyist. They have much less to lose. They have much less to worry about, and they have much. They're not necessarily trying to sell anything, whereas a professional critic may have a great deal to lose. They may be very, very highly influenced by the social circles that they're in, or by the literary influences that they have. And to me, a professional critic, to me, I don't feel like I can trust them as well, and that may not be fair at all. But I think that there's usually a monetary compensation, I guess, maybe, that is involved, and I think that they're much more likely to have more personal connections, and that might make it harder for them to say what they really think. And they are also they are also subject to a certain amount of personal political correctness that maybe a hobbyist reviewer wouldn't feel that they were caught up with that. So I think something's lost and something's gained both ways. With a professional critic, you get a highly trained critic who knows how to read books, who understands literature, who knows what the current climate is like in the literary world, whereas you don't get that as much with a hobbyist. But again, there's that honesty, and once you get to know your book reviewer, who is just a hobbyist, you'll have a better idea of what motivates them, and it wouldn't necessarily be money, fame, fortune, notoriety, any of those things. So that's what I think about that. And this is the end of the questions. I will tag a few people below. I really liked this. I've never considered myself an influencer. I've truly just been doing this for fun, and I've never considered myself per se an educator. So I'm not trying to teach you anything. I'm trying to, I guess I want you to be entertained by what you hear me have to say about books, and I want to look for that community where there's connection and that excitement when you like the same book that somebody, when you're listening to someone's book review and they say, I love this book, and you feel the same way. That's so exciting. And it's also interesting to hear what they didn't like, because sometimes it gives you a little perspective. So I'm going to leave it with that. I will tag 5 people, and until we get together again, please be kind to yourself, be kind to others, be kind to the planet, be blessed, and have a good day. Bye-bye.